So my name is Greta Hagen. I'm the Director of Philanthropy and Engagement at Respond, and I'm thrilled to be joined by my colleagues today who are going to introduce themselves in just a moment. And we are excited to bring this presentation to you all and to the internet after it lives on after tonight, because this film really shows, although it doesn't take place in our neighborhood or even in our country, it shows a lot about the process for folks who need to call the hotline, who need to call, in our case, 911, and who need to have a response. So we're going to get right into it. So I'm going to turn it over to Jen and Tanina to introduce yourselves and your roles at Respond, and then we'll go from there.
Great. Thank you, Greta. So my name is Jen Wolter, and I am the manager for community-based services here. So I oversee our program at the Suffolk County House of Correction, where we work with victims who are actually incarcerated and so have been criminalized often for the abuse or unrelated things. And then also our community program, which serves, again, anyone in need that comes to us looking for services as a survivor, but also our education and outreach programs as well.
Hi everyone, my name is Tanina Dawidowicz and I'm the Law Enforcement Partnership Coordinator here at Respond. In my program, so we're currently partnered with 6 police departments, and that includes Reading, Woburn, Wilmington, Malden, Melrose, and Wakefield. We have 2 civilian advocates that are, they cover 3 of those police departments each, so they split the work evenly. They are in there to follow up on any domestic incidents that come through the station, whether they're physical or verbal in nature, and they're there to just reach out to folks to make those initial phone calls to get them to feel more comfortable. Oftentimes they can feel a little tense about wanting to reach out to law enforcement, so it kind of helps to give them peace of mind to know that they're talking to a civilian and that everything that they share with us is of course confidential, and we're here to help in any way that we can.
So hopefully everyone was able to watch the documentary. I am going to share a quick slide. Do want to warn, the pictures are of the women from the film, photographs from after assaults, in addition to them more recently. But if you didn't have a chance to watch it, the documentary looked at the Thames Valley Police Department and looked at the unit that investigates the domestic violence there, and followed 3 women for about a year. There's the stories, unfortunately, some was caught on tape and there was, evidence of the assaults. And then kind of their journeys, not only for their families and emotionally, but also through the criminal justice system. So the 3 ladies are pictured here, and obviously we can use them or talk in general as we go through this evening. So before starting, just wanted to share some of the prevalence here in the US and why this is such a concerning issue. Average of 24 people per minute, which is huge. That's, I actually couldn't even break it down however many, it's every few seconds really, right? That someone is falling victim to rape or physical violence or stalking. And that's just from a partner, right? This is not including, muggings or, rapes by strangers and things like that. So this is all within those relationships, which is really a staggering number. 1 in 4, 1 in 7 men, and that's held pretty steady for quite a while as the statistics for who experiences this. And I think it's really important to remember, especially as we saw in some of the videos, that, a lot of the extreme physical harm and certainly homicides, unfortunately, are most often happening when someone's leaving or right after they've left, really up to that first year after they've left. And so, it does play into why it's so difficult for some to leave these relationships. And one of the great examples, I think, was hearing, I'm blanking on her name now from the video. I'm blanking on her name. Anyway, this woman was, talking with the investigator, and it came out that, she had said she had no contact. They had, put the protective order in place, and they confronted her about, we've heard you saw him. And she's like, no, I didn't. No, I didn't. And then they had video and said, look, here you are at a restaurant. And this was her response, right? I saw him, I did. And asked why she did it. I don't know. She compares him to being a drug. And I think it's important for us to all remember that, whether we've had experiences and knowing, how that struggle, that push and pull to leave occurs, whether we've seen friends go through this or we have people we want to help, there's no quick fix. The average is 7 times that someone is thinking about and or actually leaving, but often going back for a number of reasons before they finally break that relationship safely.
And so for the next slide here, so I think the biggest thing to note is that when it comes to domestic violence, victims don't want to come forward to report to the police. We have a stat here that says there's less than 1% of folks that do so. In my role here with Respond, I can definitely say that the majority of the police reports that we have that come through the station, it's oftentimes neighbors that are calling it in, or maybe friends or family members rather, that have witnessed something that took place. The first people that they are going to go to, if they are in a dangerous situation, is a trusted friend or family member, but we know that can be extremely difficult because their abusers have isolated them oftentimes, for many years. But that's the first biggest step for them, is to find that trusted person. Oftentimes there is a huge fear of retaliation, and that's why they don't want to come forward, and why, these cases do go unreported. We do see here that females, it says, were 4 times as likely as males to go unreported to the police due to that. About 30% of victims will state that there was no assault, despite the police reports. Oftentimes the police will get a call, they'll show up, because they'll feel like they are in an emergency situation and they need the help. And then they get there and nope, nothing happened. I really don't want you to be here. Can you just go? And they know that by having the police there, it's unfortunately going to escalate the situation with their abuser. And, maybe the abuser gets locked up for a few nights, but then he comes home, and what happens then, right? So there's always that fear in the back of their mind. In terms of the arrest rates, it says that they do range from 3.2 to 12.2 per 1,000 calls. And there's a 60% prosecution rate here. 55 to 68% of report that there are multiple incidents before calling the police. So we definitely do see this a lot where, they say that, I've been physically abused for multiple years and I just haven't come forward, and now I just can't take it anymore. And I need to reach out for this kind of assistance because I do know that he's going to kill me if I don't.
So with that, we wanted to really kind of open it up to a discussion. These are just some questions that have come up that have been discussed amongst us that we find, a lot of people want to share. You'll notice in the last one that Massachusetts has declared domestic violence a public health emergency. And so, there is a wide ranging, we still hear a lot of times say, oh, it's a domestic issue, it's just between the family. But this is really a huge community issue, both in the way it affects the individuals and the community at large, obviously the services that are provided, and, first responders and counselors like ourselves, and workplaces and friends and family and neighbors and everything. So wanted to open it up, see if there were any initial questions. Otherwise, Tanina and I are also happy to kind of share some of our own thoughts. But if there's anything that people wanted to ask, Greta is going to kindly monitor our chat. So you're also welcome to unmute yourself. We just remind you this is being recorded.
Yes, you can raise your virtual hand or unmute yourself, or go ahead and chat, even chat I have a question and we'll call on you. But I also have some questions to get you started, friends. I wanted to just know a little bit from both of your experience working with folks. Like in the film, we see somebody retract their statement or want to retract their statement, and I want to hear a little bit from both of you about kind of what goes on as you're talking to survivors about moving forward with kind of a criminal justice response to what's going on. Like, are you hearing that kind of ambivalence? Are you hearing people really kind of struggling to make a decision about what they want to do?
So yeah, Tanina, you may want to start because you obviously have a lot more of the current reports and court cases going on, but I'm happy to add in after.
Oh, no worries at all. I would say it's definitely something that we see a lot where victims do unfortunately retract their statements, and just similar enough, like how many times do victims know that they need to come to court and they just don't show up because they just can't bring themselves to do it. One of the things that I'm kind of grateful for, at least in COVID times, in terms of the restraining orders, is that they're doing that virtually, and so victims don't have to worry about physically being there in the same room as their abuser. That is the thing that they are most scared of. I think it was one of the women at the end of the documentary had shared that she just saw his face, and she just wanted to say, I'm so sorry, like, we can figure this out maybe when you get out, right? And so there is just that overall huge sense of guilt that these women are feeling.
Yeah, and I think, Tanina already talked about this a little bit, right? Is that fear? Sometimes in that moment, it's, yeah, this just happened and I need to, and then they, whether internally or externally, get the pressure of, wait, this could make things worse, right? And all right, now I've reported this, am I actually going to be safe by these charges being placed? Working with folks that are actually incarcerated, and whether it's, directly related to the abuse or indirectly, very often we are hearing so far too often, right? I finally feel safe, right? They go to jail to feel safe because they don't know what their partner would do if they accused, shared evidence went against them. And I think it's also important too that, not just the emotional piece, but, there are a lot of difficulties navigating the system, right? You put in, you lay charges, and there's multiple steps to go through in court. Like Tanina said, we often will have people not show up. And sometimes it's because they can't physically get there, right? If you have to show up and be in front of a judge, not only are you, faced with your abusive partner, but, do you have childcare while you go? Do you have the money for transportation to get there? So there's a lot of barriers, both emotionally, logistically, and certainly, with concern around physical safety.
Yeah, thank you both. Tina, did I just cut you off?
You're good. I also wanted to read Detective Alper's.
Great. We're on the same
too. Yeah. Sorry, I'm just scrolling up a little bit. Oh Lord, here are all of our jokes. Sorry. So Detective Alpers was saying that he finds that many domestic cases don't move forward because of the reluctance to potentially harm the aggressor, or they just are feeling really bad and guilty, and they're putting to just put the incident behind them rather.
That's true. I've heard that a lot, right? I don't want them to go to jail. I don't want them to be punished.
Or just not even wanting to deal with it, right? Like I don't even want to go. I just want to pretend that it didn't even happen and and move on with my life. For sure.
So what got me into this work was that I was working with young people, and actually one of my first kind of experiences was accompanying a young person I was working with who was facing her abuser in court and did not want to go, but was being summoned. And it was really the civilian advocate in that court that just wowed me, because it was like an incredible just like the care and just being really honest and really clear about this is what's going to happen in the next hour. And I'm going to stand right next to you. I'm going to stand between you and your abuser. And I was just like really wowed by it. And so I wonder if you could maybe share a little bit what court accompaniment looks like what that, whether you're preparing somebody for court or whether you're actually accompanying someone. And so I'd love to hear what that's like in real times and in COVID, because I know that that's different. And you've touched a little bit on this already, both of you, but just like, what does that look like in real life? What does that look like in real time?
Sure. So one of the things that I just want to point out with in terms of getting a restraining order during COVID is every court is kind of handling this a little bit differently. Most of them, I'll say, have been doing hearings over Zoom, which, like I said earlier, I think that's been really beneficial for clients, just knowing that they don't physically have to be in the same room as their abuser. We're able to kind of give them a rundown rather on what to expect. Of course, at this point, they've already completed their affidavit, and so it's just a matter of them being there to confirm that these are all things that they still believe are true and valid, and that's why they're seeking out this order. We do let them know that the abuser is going to be there to give their own piece. If they do show up, oftentimes, we see it where they don't and they flake, which is always a good thing for the victim, always works to their favor. But there have been some instances, as an example, the Cambridge and Medford court that we work with kind of do it on a case-by-case basis. The judge decides what they want to do. Some folks are able to do the hearings virtually. Others are doing it in person. Thankfully, our advocates have been able to attend these in-person ones that are taking place, which has been really nice. We haven't been in the courts for about a year now with COVID. So it's been great to kind of get back to a sense of normalcy in the office with doing that, providing that service. I'm trying to think, what are some helpful tools that we have recently given out to clients for the restraining order process with court accompaniment? I think the biggest thing is, we're always big fans of pros and cons list. Oftentimes a victim can get on the stand and feel intimidated. And like we said, then they want to take back everything they said or change their mind. And so I think it's always good, before you go into a court hearing to make that pros and cons list. Like, why do I really need this court order? I want to hold myself accountable. And if I feel like I'm going to change my mind, let's open that right back up while we're there to remind myself that this is crucial to my safety, my children's safety, and all the other parties that are involved.
Yeah, and I can share, just a couple, examples. I went to court with a woman once, and it was regarding visitation and custody. So the restraining order had already been in place, for quite a while. And just the anxiety and the stress, right? She was constantly looking around, did not want to be in the same room, even though there's, dozens of people. He poked his head through the doorway, and she started crying. I'd have to go out in the hall and look for him, so she could go to the bathroom, and all of this. I think it was probably an hour and a half before the case is seen, right? She is jittery and jumpy. And one of the things that it's so hard, but we try to tell people, you need to be calm and relaxed. And that is so difficult. And in the end, right, he was there. He was a pretty smooth talker, presented very calmly and put together, where she was just jumbled, right? And probably seemingly to all these stereotypes, right, of, oh, she's just crazy and accusing me of all this. That's probably, maybe what people that didn't know her were assuming. And so, I think it's just so difficult to prepare someone when, we also don't know how they're going to react. So, but, I think, Greta, you mentioned it in the question is, I've been there. I was with another woman, and, they had fled the house. They were luckily in shelter. And, when they went back for the to extend the restraining order, he came with his whole family. Everyone was loud. I could feel her tense. I purposely sat in between, you know, on her side that was closer to him, right? If he was walking somewhere, I shifted, you know, just those little things that can help put someone at ease. A lot of the times too, well, actually that same woman, one of the things she was most grateful for is, again, while we were waiting, we just chatted about anything and everything, totally unrelated. And so I think we've all probably experienced that, right? Anything you're going to that's got some anxiety, you know, take someone with you and chat about other things so that you're not in your own head and letting that anxiety build. But I think it's also really hard because there is such gray. You know, we'd like to believe that everyone that's deserving of a restraining order gets it, but we have seen people falsely accuse others of restraining orders, right? And get those put in place. So then, you know, it muddies the water, you know, for someone to kind of speak up and say, in fact, it's the other way around. You know, I also, you know, the evidence piece, right? And feeling this need to prove. I was with someone who had videotaped on the phone, had videotape of an incident. But because she followed him a bit and was yelling at him, the judge said, well, you don't seem to be afraid. So nope, I'm not going to grant this. So it's, you know, it really can be tough. I think a lot of times survivors will feel like, you know, damned if I do, damned if I don't. It's not an easy decision to go to court, and definitely difficult to make it through.
Yeah, thank you. And you've alluded to this a little bit, Jem, but you in fact work with folks who have potentially been incarcerated for self-defense or for, you know, fighting back. And so I don't know if you could talk a little bit more about that, about like what that kind of what that looks like for folks when they're like, I'm incarcerated because of, you know, I did what I thought I was supposed to do. And now this is going to be on my record forever. This is going to be with me for forever. What happens next?
Yeah, I'll never forget when we started the SAFER program down in Suffolk County. I was sitting one of the first, we were doing these small, just kind of presentation workshops to introduce. At that time, we still are primarily in the women's units. And so we were doing an intro to the women's orientation, those who had come in recently. And, you know, as I'm introducing, and all of a sudden I hear someone say, oh, I know Respond, I've worked with them. I was like, you know, and I, you know, so afterwards grabbed her and realized it was someone that had worked with us starting about 2 years prior. I actually can still remember the day that she fled the situation, and one of our counselors was on and actually having a phone call with her every 30 minutes, right? They'd planned everything out and they were having check-ins to make sure she stayed safe. And here it is now, I think it was about probably 6 months after that, if that. And her ex had put the restraining order on her and then had charged her with violation of restraining order. And at the end, I think every single one got dropped, but she sat in jail multiple times, usually for a month or so, waiting for that chance to be heard. And, you know, each time they were able to poke holes, show that, you know, things did not happen as he was saying. And she was ultimately released. However, it was, you know, probably in and out over 6 months. I think there were 4 different violations that he claimed. So, you know, that's a good example. Like you said, there are a lot of people that will, you know, stand up for themselves, try to fight back, and then they are seen as the aggressors. A lot of people who have experienced this over and over and over actually become kind of, I call them reactive abusers. I don't know if there's a better term, but you know, when they start to feel like something might happen, they're going to actually almost become the aggressor, because they're trying to protect themselves ultimately, because they know what's happened in the past. And then we have a lot that come in on, you know, drug charges, other property charges, if there's been damage, you know, because a lot of their coping skills aren't healthy ones and get them in trouble. We've also had people that, you know, take the rap for a partner. They don't want their partner to get in trouble. So, you know, they claim responsibility, or they're present at the moment. So they become a co-defendant. You know, so unfortunately, there's a lot of ways that victims do become criminalized, you know, because of the abuse, whether it's during the incidences or, you know, kind of the aftermath and the effects that it has on them long term.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, we talk about like power up versus power over, right? Like an abuser exerting power and control. And somebody in the chat says, you know, we see this in child abuse cases too, like sometimes kids being violent either with an offending parent or with other kids, other siblings, kids at school too, to kind of assert some control. So I want to like pivot a little bit in this questioning, and maybe Tanina, maybe we can start with you. But like we see in the film, like the isolation of folks, but then we also hear your statistics, right? Like it's like a neighbor calling, a friend. So I'm wondering, like from both of you, what are some suggestions we can share, some tips we can share with folks who might be concerned about somebody in their life, whether that's somebody kind of like an acquaintance, like a neighbor, or whether that is, you know, a sibling or a friend, a loved one, a coworker.
I think, you know, the most important thing to do is, you know, if somebody does trust you enough to come forward to share any of this information with you, to let them know that, you know, they can continue to do this, that you're a support system for them, and that they're so brave for coming forward to tell you, because oftentimes you could be that first person, right? And that's a big deal. You want to be able to applaud them for doing so. You know, to ask them, like, do you feel like you're at the point where you want to get the police involved? Do you need someone to go with you? Can I take you there? Do you need a safe ride? And, you know, if they're not, you know, being respectful of that, they have to be able to make their own decisions. We want to be able to empower the folks that we work with. And, you know, by you forcing them to do anything, it's just going to make them want to shut you out at the end of the day and to stop coming forward to you to tell you about the things that have been going on.
Yeah, I always describe it like, just like Tanina said, right? Like when our parents yelled at us to clean our rooms, go clean your room. I'm like, no, you know, I put my foot down, like, don't tell me what to do. And I think, you know, yeah, that happens all the time, right? If you get tough with some friends, right, they're going to push back. I think to, you know, remember too, that there is a lot of love. A lot of times people are protecting their partner. They do care about them, right? There's a lot of good. Relationships don't start off horribly violent and degrading or negative. So, you know, to you, they're probably going to want to focus and highlight all the good that's happening. And so if you immediately kind of go into attack mode, they're going to get defensive. And so I always recommend too that people try to focus in on, you know, pick up on little situations that they've brought up, or, you know, try to find, you know, commonalities, but really the feelings, right? How it's affecting them is most important. We also don't ever want to tell people what to do because that's what their abuser's been doing, right? And so we don't want to emulate that, and we don't know best, you know, we're not living in their shoes. So, you know, I would hate to suggest something that doesn't work or even makes it worse. But, you know, just thinking, we actually have someone who's been calling recently, you know, concerned about a cousin, and, you know, how do I address this? I know it's happening. The cousin had not disclosed. And one of the things that came up was, oh, there, you know, she's pregnant. Let's, you know, focus on that. How are you feeling about the pregnancy? You know, is it gonna, you know, are you guys happy about it? You know, how do you feel about being a parent? How does he feel about being a parent? You know, things like that, that you can kind of softly help them share their feelings. You know, are you happy? Are you comfortable? Do you feel good in this relationship? You know, keeping it really broad and just giving them the space to talk, you're much more likely to get them to open up than, you know, trying to point stuff out or assert your assumptions.
Yeah, I think there are
Call
a
us for
couple.
help.
Yeah, and call us for help for sure. And I will drop the support line in this video comments, and it is there in the chat as well. A couple things came up for me when you were talking about this, which is one is that you both kind of addressed like the question that we still hear, right, in our society of why didn't she leave? Why didn't they leave? And the fact that somebody loves their partner, they maybe have children, maybe they just want that partner to change, that, you know, so I think you've addressed all of that, as well as the logistics of like how hard it is to, and how dangerous it is to leave. So I appreciate you both raising that. I just lost the other train that you also
well, I can jump in. Yeah. And that just reminded me too, you know, one of those other barriers, I should have written down their names, because of course, now that I'm on the spot, I'm blanking on the women's names from the video. But, you know, the third one that was introduced in with the young kids. And if you remember the scene where, you know, the counselor she was working with was safety planning with her child. You know, well, okay, if you see, you know, see the partner, what are you going to do? Here's how to do it. And a lot of people, it's difficult to point it out when kids are involved, right? And even having the kids know, even though I can tell you they probably do, but right, like being able to discuss it, having, you know, feeling that they're going to put that extra worry or burden on any children that are involved also can make it really difficult. And I think, you know, you saw that with her, and clearly, you know, her kids supported her, which was great, but, you know, sometimes that's not the case, and it can complicate things as well.
Yeah. So I know that we kind of talked a little bit about some like silver linings of COVID, especially around the court, you know, accessibility of court for some folks, or some reduced barriers. And in the chat, Detective Alfers also kind of echoed that it has kind of insulated vulnerable folks in a certain way. I'd love to also hear, though, what has been really challenging, and kind of like the whether you've seen kind of a different kind of call that especially Tanina, that your team is responding to. Like what does this situation look like for folks?
In terms of some of the challenging things that I can say about court, I would say the biggest thing that I've seen folks struggle with is the lack of not knowing how their hearing is going to be presented, if it's going to be virtual or taking place physically in court. You know, we can help to mentally prepare someone for court, but I think that's harder to do if they don't 100% know if they do physically have to be there to be in the same room as their abuser. I think that's definitely the toughest thing that I've seen for the LEP program.
Yeah, and I think you know, we have a lot of support virtually, which is great, and a lot of people like that because logistically, yeah, you don't have to travel and get there. But I think there's also a lot of people that, you know, especially at the height of COVID when they were home, and, you know, likely not going to work, and the partner wasn't going to work. They didn't have that chance to call out for help. You know, I think tensions ran higher for everyone. I'm guessing, you know, even the healthiest of relationships had some tension and arguments and things during the last year. And so, you know, especially at the beginning, we were seeing a lot more you know, maybe not getting as many calls, but they were much more serious. You know, the actual harm done, you know, the physical violence was increasing. And I think it's I'm back and forth all the time about, the virtual. I'm a people person. I need the energy of the others in the room, but and that's been tough, right? Because a lot of people, it's hard to just talk to a voice on the other end of the phone, or be on Zoom when it's like, yeah, okay, I can see you and it looks like you're alone, but I don't know who else is in the room with you. And so I think not having the face-to-face support and that added comfort has also kind of increased the anxiety and increased people's ability and comfort level of reaching out. That said, I think there's also a lot of people that have like, okay, this is it. Like, now I realize how toxic this really is, and it is time to make a change. So yeah, probably good and bad coming out of this.
So I can keep asking questions forever, but I don't see any other questions
yeah, I'm gonna,
in the chat.
I'm gonna shift, since we're not using those other questions.
Yeah.
Shift and share. These are a few, obviously, our information. I know, Greta, you said you shared it in the chat as well, but the National Hotline is 24 hours, as we are not. SafeLink is kind of coordinates for the whole state. So they also are 24 hours, but they also have kind of the most up-to-date availability of shelter spaces. And Love is Respect, it is geared towards young adults and teens. I think it's great for everyone. There's a lot of really good one-pagers on there with just ideas, especially supporting people. There's even little quizzes, so you can, see, am I a healthy partner? So, these are some resources that I would highlight as well for people to look for more information after this evening. So I'll keep these up for a little bit before I stop sharing. But yeah, back to discussion.
Awesome. I appreciate that. And just to reiterate that should anyone call our support line outside of hours, you will be connected with your choice of the National Hotline or the statewide SafeLink hotline. So that number is always good, no matter what time it is. And so I do have like a final question, but I wanted to just first ask Jen and Tanina if there's anything that you would really love to share that the film brought up for you that we haven't talked about yet.
I mean, one thing I can tell you, I've seen it a couple times now, but the first time, oh my goodness, Sabrina is her name. Remember that one, right? And just, I mean, there's video, right? Like the police come in with their body cams and you see what she looks like. And, that she comments about like, I just wanted that next punch to kill me. Like I wanted it to be over. And the fact that, this is happening with so many people saying it's not my business, I shouldn't get involved, is just, to me, I think, a huge mistake. I think you have to be careful on how you get involved, of course. But, people ignoring it and feeling like this isn't an issue. I mean, that's unfortunately happening to people all over the world. And, it breaks my heart that people are to that point where they say, just kill me. Like, I want this to end, just kill me. And then of course you go on through that, right? And the fact that the charge is because she didn't have broken bones, the charge can't be as, as high, even though she looked the worst by far. So I think, I really think that this documentary highlighted just so many of the complexities. I think, the complexities, the challenges that the criminal justice system, right, the detectives, those in the courts, the lawyers are all facing, because this question of here's what the law is, here's what we can prove, here's how we feel about it, right, is often not aligned. And, but then also there's that emotional struggle that people that experience this go through. And so, I hope, patience, kindness, understanding. The world needs more of that right now, for sure.
And one of the things that I wanted to mention is I really felt for one of the survivors who, was in a really severe domestic violence situation, and she kept going back and texting with him, and she even met up with him a few times for a coffee or, to pick up a gift for her child. And, as a mom, of course, you want your child to be able to have a relationship with their father, but you could just tell like that was such an emotional roller coaster for her. And ultimately, when victims do something like that, it's more harmful for their case. If a victim has a restraining order out here, and then, a judge sees that, she's going out of her way to make connections with her abuser, they're going to say, you're not taking this seriously. You don't need this in place, do you? And so it's just kind of like a sad reminder how common that is.
Yeah. But I think, I'll just jump in too, because be like, oh, and this doesn't work and this doesn't work. Right. But I think, it's been great, especially I think with the introduction of our SAFER program, because we are now on the defendant side of things at times.
Mm-hmm.
And, I have had really great conversations with lawyers and officers and judges. So I've had judges pull me aside to say, like, thank you for all you're doing. They see this person as a defendant, but they also recognize there's a lot more to this story, and they need the support that you all are giving. So, I think, especially in these times when it is so many people are on one side or the other, right? Like, just, it's complex. It's complex, and people are doing the best they can. And I think the more we talk about this and make it okay to discuss, and okay to think about and bring up, the more people will be a bit more understanding, and and have that place in their heart to see, we all have stories. Nothing's black and white, and we need to do our best to give the time needed to these folks that are really suffering, and help them as best we can.
Thank you both. Yeah, that's a good reminder. Like, I sometimes remind myself, like, every room you walk into, there's likely a survivor in that room. And so why do we still treat it like it's kind of a private thing, right? When really, like, every space there's somebody with a story of how domestic violence has impacted their life, or somebody that they love. Yeah. So before we wrap up, I want to ask, like, why do you come to this work? And so what, like, really energizes you about the work that you do? What is your favorite part of your program? Anything like that. Really answer how you wish, but really, the film is heavy. The work that you both do can be really heavy. And I am grateful that you do it. But what keeps you going? What is exciting about it?
I think for me personally, what keeps me going, at least, in particular for the LEP program, is being able to follow someone throughout their whole journey. So from the first time that we get a police report that comes through the station, to being able to counsel them, to be able to provide them with some financial assistance, once they do separate from their abuser, who, maybe makes the majority of the money, or has put the victim in serious debt where she's struggling, whatever the situation may be, to working with that client to, finding emergency shelter or setting them up with our amazing housing program here at Respond. So that's what gets me through the day is, even though you're hearing some of these really sad stories, you're going to be able to look back and, to have that client reach out to you to say, thank you so much for being there for me, when I felt like I had no one else to support me through this.
Yeah, I think, I would play off what you just ended with there, Tanina, right? Of like, do they have anyone else? I think we so often hear, right? Oh, you're the first person that's believed me, the first person that's listened, you're the first person that's helped. Was it we were saying earlier today, right? Find the yes. We're going to find a way to help, right? We may not have every resource needed, but we will go out and find the resource. And I think just having that safe space to talk and seeing and you can visibly see it in someone, right? You can visibly see them relax when they can kind of get things off their chest and feel like they have a safe place to talk about it. And I think for me, I've had more and more people that refer others. And so the fact that, we have people that are so impacted by working with us that they see others and recognize it in others, they can come back to us and say, hey, like, I started this new relationship and all of a sudden I noticed this. So I knew that wasn't going to go in the right direction. And so I made a different decision than I would have in the past. But the amount of people that, are just like, hey, like this helped me, and they try to help others, and they, recommend others come to us. I've also had people that I work with that start mentoring other people. Our support group right now, this group after the first, I think, Kristen, who runs our support group, saying after the first one, they were already exchanging numbers and be like, oh, great, we have each other as resources of support. So that to me is like, we're the ripple. If we can ease someone's mind in one little way, they then pass it on. And that for me is kind of the most exciting, I think, to see that ripple effect of our work.
Well, both of you, that was a lovely way to end. And I want to just appreciate that you are those ripples. And I also want to appreciate that folks that are here with us tonight are also doing this work, many folks. So thank you to everybody that's tuning in. And in fact, everybody can be part of this work, right? So give us a call if you have a question, or if you want to know how to be an empowered bystander, upstander, whatever you want to call it. If you want to help kind of, interrupt violence and be a supportive person in someone's life, even just handing out our support line number, writing it and leaving it in a bathroom when we're in public again, like you never know who might need to find that. So be in touch, and thank you all. And thank you both.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.